Dear Dr. Faber, greetings and nice to see you in First Western.
Thanks for having me.
I would like to start with the recent statement of Vice Chancellor of Germany, Robert Habeck. He said that he is really ashamed that it took too much time and was too late for German government to start sending weapons to Ukraine after the start of the invasion. Why did German government hesitate to do so after the 24th of February last year?
I fully agree with our Vice Chancellor Habeck on this point. I think it's really a shame that Germany didn't act earlier and more powerful, especially when it comes to combat battle tank Leopard. The issue on that is that we have a three-party coalition in Germany. My party, the Liberals, and the Green Party as well, was very much in favor of supporting Ukraine more heavily, but the Social Democrats were not. So we had to convince them, and that unfortunately took some time. But now I think we are on the right spot. We're heading for the right direction, also with the support of the Social Democrats. So right now we are giving a lot of support from Germany to Ukraine, also on the military issue.
Speaking about Leopard tanks for Ukraine, it was really a historical decision. But what was the problem with this decision? Problem was with Chancellor Scholz's view on this issue, or what was the problem?
I think it was more about his party, actually. He's leader of the parliamentary group, Mützenich, but also some others who have more like a pacifist approach. And they didn't get so pragmatic about it in the first place. So I think there were some discussions within the Social Democratic parties, and we as Greens and Liberals, where we pushed very hard to make it faster, to make it more convincing. And even now we are still pushing for running up the numbers, scaling up the numbers if it comes to ammunition, but also if it comes to weapon systems such as the Leopard. Especially the German industry, but also our Bundeswehr still has something to do. And we are giving, like last week, we decided to give more financial support so that Ukraine can also buy more military equipment in Germany.
We also will cover this recent decision of German government, but I would like also to ask you about Leopard 2 tanks. Chancellor Scholz said that it was impossible to do so without the United States decisions. Don't you think so that German government could send us Leopard tanks even without American Abrams, because Germany has the biggest economy in Europe?
I think the American government has been very clear on that point, that it's the decision of every own NATO country whether it wants to send battle tanks to Ukraine or not. As Poland has sent more than 200 battle tanks last year, as the Czech Republic more than 40. So yes, we can do this in a common approach with other countries such as Great Britain or the United States, but we don't have to. So I think this was an argument that was more headed towards the internal debate in Germany. It's nice to do this in a common way, but Germany and other Leopard user states can use it on their own as well. There was no necessity to wait for it.
I would like also to cover last decision of German government on 12 billion euro to Ukrainian security assistance. What does it mean, this decision? Could you please provide us some details of this decision?
Yes, before this decision, we said we will give more than 2 billion euro in military help so that Ukraine can buy for 2 billion euro for military equipment in Germany this year. Now we added more than 3 billion more for this year. So for this year, we now have 5.4 billion euro where Ukraine can buy military equipment in Germany. And for instance, if the Bundeswehr is giving military equipment away to Ukraine, we can re-equip the Bundeswehr also from these numbers. And then we said that we will help Ukraine in the coming years up to 2032 with additional 8 billion euros, where Ukraine can purchase military equipment in Germany, such as companies such as Rheinmetall are providing ammunition, for instance, not only for the Leopard tank, but also for artillery ammunition. So the need to finance this purchase is much easier now. That was a very important decision in the Defense Committee and in the Budget Committee last week.
So this decision has long-term goal to support us for long term, yes?
This is short-term goal right now for this year as well, because the money was also already quite short, and we are just in April right now. But there's also a long-term approach, a long-term commitment from Germany to help Ukraine for the next 10 years, basically. So yes, we will continue to support you in your struggle against the invasion.
Does this mean that the war could last for a long time?
We hope not so, but we want to be prepared for every scenario. And I think it's also a very important sign that we send to the Kremlin and that we send to Putin, that we will not stop supporting. So he cannot just wait for it until Germany or other countries stop supporting, get tired of it, but we prepare to support Ukraine as long as it takes.
So even if the war ends, Germany will still support our army in the long term.
Yes, I think even if the war ends and we will have hopefully some kind of peace treaty, I think Ukraine needs to have a very strong army and needs to be able to defend itself. So we have to then invest in rebuilding Ukraine. This is then the biggest issue, but also Ukraine has to have a very strong army because Russia will stay your neighbor. You can do nothing about that.
Thank you for your support and for your support for your government of Ukraine. But I would like to move on with fighter aircraft for Ukraine. We still need fighter jets, and Germany has some modern fighters. When could Germany send us modern fighter jets, which are important for us to liberate occupied territories?
I talked to the Ukrainian government and also to the Ukrainian embassy here in Germany about that issue. And the fighter jets Germany has are not the first priority for Ukraine right now, according to the Ukrainian embassy. You're heading for MiG-29, we don't have them. You're heading for F-16, we don't have them. So the two models we have when it comes to fighter jets are Tornadoes. Tornadoes are very old fighter jets from a Cold War era. Their purpose is to go under the enemy radar to attack the enemy. This is something not very realistic nowadays anymore. And then we are running out of spare parts for these fighter jets as well. So we can have a discussion about that, but we will have to see what is the real effective help here. And on the other side, we have, besides the 80 Tornadoes, we have 140 Eurofighters. And the Eurofighter is basically built as to fight against other fighter jets. So in a more protective approach and not to have an air-to-ground mission. So we have the Eurofighter, yes, there can be a discussion about it, whether to train your pilots on it. But the air-to-ground mission is very limited when it comes to the Eurofighters because you cannot carry so much weaponry that has an air-to-ground role. But both has to be talked about, and I think to prepare both possible steps, I think we also have to start training Ukrainian pilots, such as the US is training your pilots, and Norway also said they want to start training Ukrainian pilots. So Germany can do something about that.
But it seems like German Chancellor Olaf Scholz really doesn't like this idea on fighter aircraft. What is the reason of his hesitation of fighter aircraft?
I think he hasn't decided yet whether he wants to support it or not. I think there has to be a realistic approach that is actually helping Ukraine a lot, because obviously fighter jets are very expensive and the training is also a long process. So there's no decision yet. I think we have to see as well how other countries are doing. Like Finland offered to join F-18. So It's an ongoing discussion, but nobody said no to it yet. There has to be a realistic approach, and also from the Ukrainian government. By now, they went for MiG-29 and F-16, and not really for the Eurofighter. So there has to be a message from Ukraine that they are actually their first priority is those Eurofighters, and those messages hasn't been given yet.
But could we hear yes from Chancellor Scholz on training program for our pilots and fighter jets even this year?
I hope so. I hope so. We have, with our Air Force, our Luftwaffe, we have a lot of training capabilities if it comes to a simulator, but also if it comes to actually airplanes. So I think this process with the training for your pilots should start this year and pretty soon, hopefully.
Also, would like to cover security guarantees for Ukraine. There are lots of discussions on this topic. What kind of security guarantees German government could give Ukraine, in your opinion, and what kind of security guarantees is the best for our countries?
I think the first security guarantee is a strong army for Ukraine, and the second and third and fourth security guarantee is that other countries that are neighbors of Ukraine, but also European countries such as Germany, says, okay, we will support you, we will provide military aid to Ukraine, we will provide military training, and we will also stand by you after we have a peace agreement. We say we'll stand by you on your process, for instance, for joining NATO. I think those will be proper security guarantees. So security guarantees has to be much stronger than those in the Budapest Memorandum in the 90s, because we have all seen that Russia and also other countries don't feel so bound by those security guarantees that are 30 years old now.
You mentioned possible Ukraine's membership in NATO. What is the German government position towards it? When we could become a NATO member? It seems like there is a little bit of hesitation on this issue.
Of course, the NATO is just taking countries as members that don't have current conflicts with their neighbors. So first there has to be a peace treaty, and then there can be a way for Ukraine to join NATO. As we have seen Finland joining NATO yesterday, we will probably have Sweden join NATO this year as well. So after a peace treaty, hopefully Ukraine can join quite fast.
I would like to move forward with the possible reconstruction of Ukraine. Recently, Robert Habeck visited our country, spoke with President Zelensky on reconstruction of our economy. How could German government help us to reconstruct and rebuild our infrastructure by funding these infrastructure projects, or by inviting German business to invest in Ukraine?
I think it's both, actually, and I think our Minister of Economy, Habeck, has made a good job during the last days, also taking some representatives of the German economy with them. So German companies should have an environment in Ukraine to invest there, to build a business there, to employ Ukrainians in those businesses, to take part in reconstructing Ukraine. And obviously there has to be help from all the democracies in the world to support this reconstruction. But this can start now, yes, but the main issue of reconstruction just happens when the war actually stops.
I would like to move on the situation in Germany. Is it possible to say that today Germany is fully energy independent country?
Germany will never be an energy independent country. We are a very industrialized country, small by size, but with a large population. So we will always be dependent. The question is just from whom? We try to be not too dependent from one country. We learned a lot about that last year, not to become anyhow dependent from Russia anymore. But we don't want to rely on one single other country as well. So we are trying to diversify our energy dependence and to have trade agreements when it comes to energy with a lot of countries. especially in the European Union, but also, for instance, Norway, some Arabic countries, but also the United States.
But what do you think about possible German projects with China? I know there are some business cooperation with them.
China is importing energy on their own approach. So getting energy from China is probably not a realistic issue, but we have a strong trade relations with China if it comes to products. Like we are exporting machinery to China, they're exporting a lot of products to Germany. This relationship has to be thought about, because China is supporting Russia in an economic way, and China is also a threat to its neighbors, especially if we think about Taiwan. So we are thinking about a new China strategy in Germany, but this is not so much about energy.
Don't you think that it could be dangerous for Germany to cooperate with China, and story could repeat as it was with Russia?
We really try to learn from our mistakes when it comes to Russia, and not to do the same mistakes with China. So to take care of how do you handle with a dictatorship. So we should have supported Ukraine more early and much stronger. And so now if we think about the neighbors of China, this is a good issue to say, okay, maybe we should have some cooperation when it comes to armament of Taiwan, or training of the people of Taiwan, the armed forces of Taiwan, or other countries in the region. So this is something we want to learn about it. Or we have a lot of sanction packages from Germany and the European Union against Russia right now. But these have just been brought up in politics after the full-scale invasion started. So we are thinking about maybe we should prevent such scenarios. We should think about different scenarios also on the economic side to have different sanction package prepared for every possible scenario.
Thank you. And what do you think about also far-right parties in Germany? Do they have support from people, and could they possibly block security assistance for Ukraine?
We have a far-right party in Germany, right? We have also a far-left party in Germany. If they put them both together, far-left and far-right, they have about 20% support in the population. So this is a minority, and it's not in a position to block anything. They're not part of the government. The far-right party is not part of any state government as well. So no, they can protest, but they don't have any chance to block things.
And I would like to speak with you about a possible post-war period. Also, how would German government deal with Russia after the end of the war? Would German continue business as usual with Russia?
I think that very much depends on how this war ends. So will we have the same regime, the same dictator in Russia? Will Putin will still be in power? I think then we cannot go back to business as usual. So will Russia withdraw fully from Ukraine? If not, I think there can be no business as usual. So, but if you have another regime in Russia, if Russia withdraws its troops from Ukrainian soil, there at least have to be talks about a normalization of relationships, but it's way too early to think about that right now.
And my last question for you will be regarding the atmosphere in the German society. What do you think? Do German people support arming of Ukraine and helping Ukraine as long as it takes?
So you see, I'm from Eastern Germany, the former socialist part of Germany. There, people feel more threatened by Russia, and they are much more nervous and sensible when it comes to supporting Ukraine. So they are not so sure about armament, more armament for Ukraine. But the vast majority of the population is in the former western part of Germany, And there we have very strong support. It's also always about how you frame the question. If you ask, should Germany send more heavy battle tanks, or should Germany send more fighter jets? The people are more sensitive. But if you ask, should Germany continue its military support for Ukraine? People, most in a very huge majority, say yes. So it's about framing, it's about arguing, and it's also about the age of people in the region you are in.
But majority of Germans support helping Ukraine.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Faber, for your time and for participation in the interview, and glory to Ukraine.
Thanks for having me. Glory to Ukraine.